Hello, everyone. My name is Tanya, and welcome to episode 7 of The Most Interesting People on My Timeline. This is a multi-platform series exploring how digital spaces affect the lives and work of my most interesting online friends. If you're new here, welcome. Make sure to check out all the other episodes anywhere you get your podcasts and or on YouTube, and make sure to visit taniadoes.com/interesting people for all the links mentioned in today's episode, including bonus content. If you're not new here, welcome to the middle episode of season 2, lovelies. Let me tell y'all, I am learning so much from producing this series, a lot of which I will take with me into season 3. So thank you for sticking around this long. I hope you continue to go through this journey with me. But in any case, as you can tell if you're watching this on YouTube, this is an audio only episode. It just made sense with the way that Bo and I did our interview. But visual podcast will be back for the next few episodes. But let's get into it. Today's episode features Bo Darafont. He is an artist, a designer, a poet, an overall creative person. You can find more info and links to Bo's work in the description box or on taniadoes.com/illegal drip. Welcome to episode 7 of The Most Interesting People on My Timeline. Let me introduce you to Bo.
My name is Bo. I'm an undocumented artist from Thailand. My work consists of like poetry, writing, artwork, like visual art, storytelling, and also mainly in the past have made clothes. I've been involved with the undocumented community.
So I found Bo's account and worked through different mutual friends, and he did this one spoken word video that really caught my attention because he had brought in so many components of his practice: poetry, clothing, acting, and he melded it into this one piece, which he posted on Instagram, on YouTube, and that is the piece that inspired me to approach him for the series.
I think I'm more of a storyteller in general, and I kind of express that through like writing, drawing, and clothing. And sometimes I don't have like technical skills in different things, so I think that last project was an attempt to do storytelling, and I was in an emotional space when I wrote that spoken word. So I was gonna release my clothing, and I thought like, why not release it in a video form and kind of play with this storytelling project. And at that time I already had built relationship with some videographer, models, and like a music producer. So that project was, to me, was an attempt to bring all the connections together that I've made in the past 2 years. And also I was in a if you see the video, it was like a reflection, but also like a heartbreak. Mm-hmm. So it was a combination of those two things where I was just reflecting on my life, and I wanted to just be more vulnerable, honest, and I was just going through some things, and I've always used art to process emotions. So that's where that came together, and I also wanted it to be. Sometimes I feel like I compromise myself, and I just did what might be more convenient or might make more sense. So that was a challenge for me, because I also felt like I boxed myself in as a designer, where clothing was also a means for me to just express art in myself, and also to navigate, like to also make money being undocumented without a job for the most part. So that was just like, all right, let me just be an artist again and just focus on the art.
Yeah, and honestly, like that's kind of one of the things that I found, like, so like this series is called The Most Interesting People on My Timeline. And so what I found interesting about you was that you like really put yourself out there. Like you said, this spoken word, and a lot of what's like on Bowtie and like Illegal Diary is like very personal and vulnerable, and also just like in general, like art, like a status as being undocumented is like, I guess in a way like a vulnerable state, but you put it out there, you kind of embrace it, and you make art out of it. So that's what I found interesting about your work, and like I don't know how you approach going into that, since like I said, it is a very vulnerable position, and then you share it very widely online. I don't know what your process is through that.
Yeah, a lot of people bring that up too, and I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, you know? So I feel like even when I found myself in the organizing space in the beginning, is I think what it was maybe I just needed a space to process. Maybe I just needed to say something to the world. Maybe I didn't know how to like deal with these emotions. You know, I think me coming into art was mostly in an attempt to heal, to express rather than any sort of technicality. And uh, I think I'm all right with technicality. You know, so I think I'm not sure, right? Sometimes also oversharing and things like that, or sometimes I just couldn't shut up. So I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, and it was just maybe there's a certain element too of wanting to be heard and seen and validated, and and a lot of it is also not knowing how to deal with these emotions. So illegal trip, illegal diary was also kind of like that, right? I was just like, that was just my way of really processing life being undocumented, and Bowtie was just like, I still want to have this side of me that is just like free as an artist and as a person to just express myself without just always, you know, I felt like the undocumented status was 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 my only identity, you know. So Bowtie was just like a place for me to still try to have the other part of me. So it was more about like, I guess, my vice, spirituality, love, and just attempt of art, you know.
Yeah, no, I think that's super dope, and like I completely like get it, and especially when you're making art in a space and you won't like you're not afraid to say like, oh yeah, I'm undocumented or whatever, but then at some point you get boxed into that a little bit. So I think it's really dope that you have found ways to like create outside of that and jump back into it whenever you want to. Bill has multiple accounts that he has mentioned throughout the episode. He has at illegal underscore drip, which is the account that I first followed him on, where he highlighted his clothing brand. He also has another account called at bow tie underscore, where he posts more of his other creative, more personal work. Did you feel like you needed that separation in accounts when you were sharing, or like did you ever want to just put it all in one account or whatever?
You know, I think that's a great question. I think that's been the biggest debate ever since it was ever separated. I think it all should have been one account, but I don't know. I feel like I just separated one day. I think it depends, right? So also, I want to say like illegal drip and illegal diary is the same thing. I just keep switching the name, and then these are also like my confusion, right, of the direction of where I want to take these things, right? So, because I kind of took a break from clothing, but before I got into that, I think I started illegal drip first. Illegal drip was like everything, you know. It was like, all right, this was gonna be where I combine my activism, my art, my emotion, community, you know, but like I had found a way to express myself creatively, and that also came out of me using to share my story with the movement at school and feeling like I'm just tokenizing myself or sometimes dreaming narrative. It was just like it was a whole freeing experience, right? Of freeing myself from like the fact that I couldn't. I thought, I mean, I don't have DACA, right? So technically, I could work with I-10, but it's still pretty hard to get life that way. So when I say I couldn't work, I don't mean that entirely, but it's also a mental block and systematic block that makes me feel, and also a lot of jobs don't really hire you. So legal drip was a way to free myself from that. It was also a way for me to tell my story and be more creative with my undocumented identity outside of the immigration movement, and also a way to like build community. So it was all of that, and I felt like, right, it felt like it got somewhat popular and people really like appreciate that. And then I think people also like, you know, with the insight and everything, people liked a lot of things that I said or created that is around being undocumented. And sometimes when I did like my art or random stuff, I think some people who know me personally appreciate that. And there's a part of me, maybe an insecure part of me, that I was just like, I'm not sure now if I'm spamming people with other things, right, about myself. So, and I just felt like it was, even the shirt is "No human beings is illegal in stolen land," which is just a word from the movement, right? It's not like something I came up with. Kind of like the word undocumented is not something I came up with. So there's a certain like pressure that I feel like this brand is also owed to the movement. And sometimes I do donation and I work with the community, or feel like I also have used the community in a way to like spread, like at the end of the day, I feel like it belonged to the community and it belonged to this whole aspect of being undocumented. And I wanted to at times keep it separate. And then there's also a time where when I felt like I made that, there's a part of me that I feel like now thinking of it is I wanted validation from the world. So I wanted to be this artist too. And like I think it was part of my own internal issues. I just wanted to kind of like nobody boxed me in but myself. So I wanted to be like, all right, now I want like to be a general artist. I wanted to be in the music industry. I want to be in the fashion industry. And even though those two identity coexist and a lot of people see me as both and honored me as both, I there's a part of me that I didn't feel like they did move in general. And I felt like it might be I'm not sure why, but I just kept it separate. But I always wanted to bring it together. But over time, I just started building somewhat different audiences through both of them. And I just kind of like categorize it more so like, all right, if you want to see kind of content, go here. And if you want to see that kind of content, then go there. It's like if I was to make music, I just felt like I had two different sound and different genres. I didn't want to like impose both of it on the people because I'm not sure what people wanted from me.
Yeah, no, I've definitely felt that like like everything I do right now is housed under like one account, but I've always been like, oh, like some people are following me like because it's personally, some people like know me from this thing, and oh, what, like some people are following me for different reasons, and if I spam them with one thing, like you said, kind of like this isn't what they came here to see, but at the end of the day, like I'm also kind of working through that. So I really feel you and like appreciate you sharing what your thought process is on like categorizing like parts of yourself, which seems a little weird, but when you're online sometimes it feels like you have to, you know. Also, you're talking about like community and your clothing brand, which I think was the first thing that I like came across when I like found your account. And a lot of like super like high profile people have like worn your brand. I don't know, like how did you feel when you see that?
I mean, I feel good.
And I guess like you're also working in like a very like small grassroots community space. Like yeah, I don't know, like who do you think like your audience is, or like who do you appreciate being your audience?
I think that's also the part of me where at times I also went into that clout chasing game because I think I got into the fashion industry and then I just felt like I needed to not act a certain way, but I needed to market myself a certain way to kind of grow the brand and grow the audience, right? And I think that was also like sometimes I don't feel the best about it. So I think there's high profile people who are like undocumented and high profile people who are just more in like the entertainment and music industry. And I think the grassroots and the people who's been with me since day one are what makes me really love what I do. And everything else is just I feel like me losing myself at times, right? I don't think it's a bad thing to have high profile people wearing your clothes, but I felt like I put the pressure on myself to kind of use that as a strategy instead of building on just the audience that I already have and just cater to that, because I wanted to. The part of me too that at one point I just wanted to mainstream it when it started off as like this is a niche community. I think the political aspect of it is the main thing. I don't think I
Mm-hmm.
ever thought that The political aspect should not be there. I think I just put too much attention and time into marketing to a wider audience, more so like with bow tie and stuff like that, than just like building more of the community and existing relationship within illegal trip. But at the end of the day, I was only one person, and once I separated, it just became like hard to kind of do both, right? If I had to house it under the same account, it would have been easier. And I think my interest just kind of diverted. Where initially I just was like wanted to work with the community and make clothes and empower people and create community. And once I got into it, I just started wanting to like do more clothing, do more fashion, do more art, and at times I just kind of went in that direction, which I don't think is a wrong thing. I just wanted to explore that. So it was like, yeah, it was just all over the place.
Right. And you said like you're just one person, like but then like you also talked about recently like the connections you've made that like so you were able to make like this short like video with your spoken word. So like I don't know, how have you found, do you work better alone? Do you like prefer working with others in that creative space, and like how do you find like the people to work with?
So when I say I'm one person, it's like full time on one person on the team on one person, but I collaborate with a lot of people. Illegal trip, like sometimes I just kind of met them in person, or it's a friend of a friend, or I saw their art. So like I've collaborated with undocumented artists before. Collaborated with like photographer. Some of them I know. I think most of them I know in person or met them some way somehow in person. Outside of like maybe like models and people that like help me market the clothes. Sometimes I just send them clothes and then they do the shout out and things like that. Sometimes I just find them on Instagram and then. But yeah, in terms of photographer and videographer, most of them I know them or they reach out to me or I met them some way somehow.
I was listening to the immigrations podcast, like the episode you were on, and like very briefly you were talking about like how you travel around. Like I know you went to like New Orleans for that like the demonstration. You were in like Washington or San Francisco or somewhere when you did that podcast. And how do like is it the same way you've built community, like that you're able to travel and like stay with people? Is it the same way that you find collaborations online or like collaborations for your brand, that you're able to like find people to stay with when you travel, things like that?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say so for sure. I think, yeah, so I think it's like, it's on like common identity, right? So I feel like the first thing I learned was really finding this common identity of being undocumented. And I think that was the most like empowering and also loving space I've ever had in my life. Where, of course, like ever since I started meeting undocumented youth, I started feeling alone. And that's what allowed me to be so vulnerable and kind of like put me in this work, the movement, and also like allowed me to travel too. And it's like context, right? I was just like a lost undocumented person who didn't know what to do with their life, and their emotions. So I just put it all in the movement, put it all, share it all, and then just went around, learned from different undocumented people, and build relationship with different people, explore myself, explore the states and stuff like that. And then throughout those, I just like learn, pick up, feel craft, and had some fun with different folks. So yeah, art was like that too. It was just like a struggling artist or people who quote unquote was chasing their dream, and I just kind of like connected with people on the same sentiment. Because a lot of people either do art because they really like art, or they do art to process emotion, and or they just want to make money. Which is like different people have different lifestyle, and I can also relate to all that. So yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and you like with community and talking about that, you were also like the reason that that I reached out to you a while ago was because you were doing the list of people and resources for like college and scholarships and stuff. Like what got you into to doing that when you were doing that a while ago, and like where is the status of that now?
I started working with a nonprofit again. That's why I did that. But outside of that, that's what I wanted Illegal Drip to be too. Like in the ideal sense, when I started Illegal Drip. So after I graduated college, I really thought about like most of my life in the U.S. I've thought about self-deporting, and that's like the issues I feel like I've been kind of cycling through every couple years, and that's also because I have my family members in Thailand. Some of them have passed away, and I think that was traumatic to me, and that was always my fear. And not having been feeling like I haven't been able to really build my life of stability here, those thoughts always resurface. So when I started Illegal Drip, that was after I graduated college, somewhat pretty down in my life, and I went to this meditation retreat. And then within the retreat, asked myself what I would do if whether or not I'm deported or not, self-deported or not, or if I'm here or not, or if people passed away or not. And I told myself that like I would like to be with community because they have been there for me. I would always like to be creative. And I like to connect with people. Those are the things that had kept me going thus far. So Illegal Drip was just a way for me to pull all of that together. And ideally, it was all right. This thing is gonna give me a job, and this thing is gonna give opportunity to other undocumented people, and we're gonna create our own agency, storytelling, and we're gonna kind of like find ways to navigate the system without needing to rely on political like change and rely on organization and institution, but to create that freedom ourselves. So, ideally, I mean, I'm still gonna keep doing Illegal Drip right now. Pause a break, but ideally, it would be a place where like non-DACA folks could just work through Illegal Drip. We can just like create this culture product, and like how people create like have use music or movie or art as a way to free themselves to shift the narrative in society. Mostly like I would say I'm also inspired by like black folks in America, really, So that was the vision. So I think what I'm doing now is just at least some parts of that. Because Illegal Drip also got so much bigger than me and so much bigger than what I thought it was and it would be. And it just became like, I guess, a space where maybe this is just saying it, right? But I think this is me saying it to make myself feel better at times. It was a space for undocumented people to just be outside of being undocumented. Like so I did it like a clothing lifestyle. Like we can just still celebrate our identity and have fun with this. Like do a photo shoot for fun and things like that. Kind of just embrace ourselves and feel seen, like literally. Just wearing this clothes out. So and then seeing each other. So it's also a way to bring advocacy to like daily lives. The resources part is like now that I'm not doing clothing, I'm putting it on break. Let me just do that, right? Like right now, it feel like it's an undocumented list. So let me just put something that's useful to people. That's the same reason why I'm so vulnerable on it because I'm just like, right, the movement, a good chunk of it was sometimes we share stories to change things and we share stories to educate other people about struggle. But I think it's really important to share stories to empower each other and to share stories to be vulnerable with each other. So that's also why I kind of did that, right? But like, I'm like, all right. At one point, I just felt like I'm just selling clothes, and I'm like, okay, was much more than clothes. Like, I just find myself being like a business person. I wasn't the greatest at, and it just became more of like logistics rather than even design and community and sharing resources of story. So that's why.
Yeah, and honestly, I think like you hit your goal with it. Like the reason that I like found the Undocu Professionals page was like because you were putting that together, and I was going through like transitioning to start working with the Undocumented Filmmakers Collective and not working like at like an office or anything. So that was a big transition because even though I have DACA, like because it's always like up in the like fucking air all the time, I was like, I don't want to be afraid that I'm just gonna like lose my job one day. So like I started doing like working for myself and like doing that. So a lot of what you shared was like really helpful when I was going through that. And like you said, like I don't I think like when you're undocumented, sharing your story is very like personal. Some people will share more than like others. And I tended to like share a lot more, and like that's how it's vulnerable and it's a little scary. And like I received a lot of hate when I first did that like online, but then you also find your community out of that, and I think that that makes it worthwhile despite what any like haters might say or whatever. Is there anything that you're working on that you want, that you can share, that you want to share, or anything that I didn't ask about that you wanted to talk about?
I think, like I said, right, storytelling is like my main thing. Poetry, I also poetry. I've been writing for a while. Um, Sometimes I don't think I'm the best at creating clothes or drawing. I feel like not no, no I don't say I'm not the best, but I mean yeah, I'm all right. But I don't know. Sometimes I feel intimidated, right? Because I feel like it's like you're diving into a technical skills or like craft, and I don't think I'm the best craftsman person. You know, I think sometimes that requires a lot of discipline and time, and I'm not confident with the amount of discipline and time I put in or the amount of skill set I have. So I like to focus on the content, which is like the story. That's why I always say I'm storytelling. Like I don't think I could like sew the best clothes or draw the best portrait, you know,
Mhm.
or even write the best like similes or whatever English situation. You know?
Mhm.
But uh so I wanna write a I wanna I want I'm working on like like a poetry book.
Mhm.
That's what I'm working on, like a poetry book. I don't know how to define it yet, but I'm working on some sort of a combination of writing and doodles and drawing. And in the past, I also have done this project called Bowtime Friends. It was like a 32 cards tarot card that combines like artwork and stories of 16 undocumented Asian American Pacific Islander. And then we did went on tour with it. I'm pretty happy and proud of that project. I'm not sure if people know about it. That was before Illegal Drip. Also, like when I was in college, I was drawing a lot. Also started at the Undocumented Art Collective. It was a space for undocumented people to just link up, meet, and just make art. And time to time, we had open mic. So I felt like I really enjoy what I did leading up to Illegal Drip, and I enjoy Illegal Drip too, and both. I mean, I enjoyed the whole process, but I felt like I really enjoyed when I was just making art for the sake of art, you know. And I said that already, but I guess that was like the conflict I always have, or the internal conflict I'm going through right now. That's why I'm on break. And also sometimes I feel like I just commercialize my pain, commercialize myself, and commercialize the brand, which is also part of what you need to do to survive. But I just needed to figure it out, right? How it's gonna look like. So those are two things. So meanwhile, right now I'm just writing and drawing freely without trying to put expectation on like how good it is as a craft because of the internal judgment and the need to commercialize it. And with bow tie, it's like also like explore like music and stuff like that. And I just wanted to be free too from just the being undocumented while still being in community. That yeah, that was just me processing all this shit, but that's where I'm at.
Yeah, no, and honestly, like I share sentiments, and like when I was talking to like yeah, Artsiri from Adelitas Apparel, like it was the same thing. Like we're all in this community and we love what we're doing, and obviously like sometimes we have to play into like commercializing it, or like like this is the system we're in, and that like to a certain extent we have to play into it, and it's like at least for me sometimes it might be like contradictory to what I want to do, but at the end of the day, if we have that community, that's what's gonna like center us and like refocus us again into what we're doing. So but I share the sentiments of like having to commercialize yourself and your story sometimes. So, of course, this series is called The Most Interesting People on My Timeline. For this segment, however, I turn it over to my featured guests to put me onto something new and tell me about the most interesting people on their timeline.
One person is Project 7 Denim. He's my friend from Chicago. When I started making clothes, like he started around the same time, and we used to be in the underground show together in Chicago. I mean, it's a whole different type of brand. I mean, he's really the person who also made me think more about like fashion branding like that. He's my friend, you know. And then there's another person named Seiji Oda, Seijioda. He's like a musical artist. He's also somebody I've been. He produced like the music for me for the bow tie video, and he's a music artist, so I appreciate him too. And then there's another guy named Tob Duke, Tob and the Duke. He's also like, uh, I mean, he was just somebody who I feel like was tap in, connected somewhat to the industry, and appreciate the bow tie brand. So he also like plugged me in a lot. I did met a videographer through him, you know, and then was able to clothes his team, things like that. Also had my like clothes on his like debut project, you know, and shout out the song. And I mean, Sultry, you know, shout out Sultry. Sultry music or Sultry sound. She's an undocumented singer. I mean, there's a lot. I'm not sure I could keep going. There's also Paulo Red. He's an undocumented filmmaker. I was gonna shout out Adelita, but you already put that out. You know, you. I'm gonna stop there. But oh, let me do two more, and then there's CJ Corral. He's somebody I always draw with. You know, he's formerly undocumented. He's an artist. He really helps me out a lot. So there's people that their pages, their Instagram page is just like it's just their personal page. So that's why I shouted them out later. Like the first two or three, they more like their page is like for business or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm gonna shout this last person out because they're my friend. Their name is Sand Dreams. I don't know how they spell it now. SandReams, maybe. I mean, they're like a DJ, producer, and things like that. So yeah, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
As always, you can find all links in the description box of whatever platform you're listening on, as well as more content on taniadoes.com/illegal drip. Thank you so much to Bo for sharing these reflections on vulnerability and community and self-categorization through Instagram accounts. It's what I live for with this series, is to talk about these things and the digital space with everyone, especially it gets to be really fun talking to someone as dynamic as Bo. Like he's dynamic creatively as a person, as an activist, and it was just a pleasure to talk to Bo. That being said, you know, follow Bo and check out some of their work. He's doing some really cool life and travel updates on his accounts right now. He's been traveling around, and it's been really heartwarming to see him living his life and enjoying it. So go check that out. That's it for this episode. You can listen to all other episodes anywhere you get your podcast, as well as watch visual versions of most of the podcasts on YouTube. And there's also bonus content and more information at taniadoes.com/interesting people. Stay tuned for the next episode where I interview an amazing photojournalist who has done work for Rolling Stone and works to highlight Latinx artists and photographers with their own newsletter. Make sure to follow me, your host, Tanya, on Instagram at Taniadoes, and to follow the social pages for this series at Interesting People Pod on Instagram and TikTok, where I post sneak peeks and cool little intros for each episode. Stay connected, stay creating beautiful things, and I'll see y'all in the next episode.